Oh, sorry, that's a 10. That's a 6 on that dice.
Looks like one of those might be the new Yu-Gi-Oh! Judge dice. Focusing on the game here. Joseph is going to go first with his Unchained strategy. See what card he starts with.
He did happen to open the Shayama, not the Unchained monster you want in your opening hand, especially when your opening play is Tour Guide. Makes it a lot harder for you to do any of your lines particularly safely.
Does look like we have that Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Not sure if you want to stop the Tour Guide there. Chris thinking about it.
I mean, realistically, you just can't let Tour Guide resolve. He does have Infinite Impermanence. I think he's going to want to hold that in his hand as long as he can if he wants to just have something to interrupt the Caesar. Looks like, okay, Joseph might have the ability to play here. Does he have an Aruha? Oh, he does have Shavara. This is going to be enough to start getting his cards through. Going to be able to destroy the Escape. Escape is going to be able to summon an Unchained monster from the deck now. Ash Blossom already used here. Will Chris want to use the Impermanence in his hand on the Yama, or is he just going to conserve it for that Caesar?
Caesar is certainly the bigger threat there, stopping those special summons, but he may not want his opponent to be able to build up a bigger board, so it just kind of is about intuition, right? You've been in this tournament long enough, you played against all these different decks, so you kind of just know it or you don't. So let's see what happens here as...
So it's a Rakea from the deck off of the Escape here, which is going to be able to go after the additional trap cards in his hand, because I know he had another one. And also just, you know, allows his board to be a little bit safer here because he's going to be able to block something along the lines of Impermanence. So you're not likely to use Impermanence now, simply because Rakea will interact with that poorly for you. But we did see that Christopher also has a Dark Ruler in his hand, so we didn't even really need to use the Impermanence. But I think had he used the Impermanence, he would have been able to just prevent some of the follow-up, because you know if he gets access to Escape again, then you can set up a Rage multiple times with the Yama in the grave. But again, it's something we don't talk about enough when you have the Pearly strategies. You need to keep cards in hand because it's not free to play every Pearly spell.
No, it definitely comes with that cost. The Pearly Sleepy Memory is great for reimbursing that hand for all those discards, but you still have to have cards to discard. So every time you're using one of those cards from hand, you're actually discounting your own ability to discard for those Pearly Memories.
Joseph taking some time to think about his play. He wants to play around as many interruptions as possible. We see the Rakea on the field giving him some flexibility, but he's choosing to remove it right now. Going to go for the Aruha on the Rakea. Rakea is going to be able to trigger, summon a monster from deck or hand.
You set the call 100 one, right? Yeah. Yep, you're good.
Yeah, so just confirming that it is Abominable Chamber of the Unchained set. That is going to be able to summon a Unchained monster from the graveyard. But it looks like Sarama is hitting the field here. Sarama, I think, so it has a couple of options here. He hasn't used the effect of the chamber yet. Maybe he opts to destroy that so that he can reset the Escape, or he just destroys the Aruha that's already on the field. Because I think at this point you need to get access to Shayama somehow. So you might have to destroy the Aruha.
Well, he's only got one chance here, so he might end up having to push here. Obviously, it's only game one, and it's best 2 out of 3, but this is one of those moments where you might regret it later if you don't push hard, but you might also find out that you don't need to.
Yep, this makes a lot of sense. Using the Infinite Impermanence here, cutting off access to the Escape so you know you don't have infinite resources there, and then also just, you know, not trying to get the Aruha destroyed. Reasonably, you didn't want to deal with both trap cards in the scenario, and especially with the Aruha being able to summon the Shayama, able to make the full field at that point.
Take a look at the extra deck. Might be time for a Link summon here.
I mean, yeah, you want to at least summon Rage. But maybe you go Rage into SP?
Certainly would be good, but he's...
Actually, you cannot because Aruha was used in hand, so he is Fiend locked at the moment.
Oh, that is correct. So these 2 Fiends will become our Unchained Soul of Rage instead.
Not necessarily the ideal board. You don't really need Chamber and Rage on the field at the same time, but if Rage happens to be destroyed by some other means, that could be really useful to be able to summon it back.
Could also use it to link off its opponent's monster, depending on how this Pearly matchup goes. We have seen Pearly stall out before.
I mean, you imagine that something's going to deal with the Rage outright, so it's going to be rare that you get to just use its effect immediately, but that's what the Chamber is for, right? You get to bring it back as soon as something happens that would force you to use the Rage, where like you have the option to immediately use it on summon. That's where you want to kind of use it.
Certainly will let you scope that out, but now we're going to activate My Friend Pearly. Joseph considering his face down cards before we even get a chance to pay those 500 life points.
Yeah, I don't know if he has an additional copy of Escape here. That would be really strong. It looks like he might, the way he's considering that other trap card. Yep, it's another copy of Escape. Yeah, and this is perfect. This is a great way to set up the chamber. He's going to be able to destroy that Rage, be able to go after the My Friend Pearly. He's going to be able to add back likely Sharvara from his graveyard to his hand, so he has even more flexibility. He's going to be able to go into Abominable Unchained Soul if he goes after the Sarama on his field at any point with that Sharvara, so he's able to keep Christopher off as many cards as possible.
Might be a difficult duel. There's not necessarily as many resources in Chris's hand that would kind of get things going. Obviously, that Dark Ruler no more is not doing a whole lot. But we haven't even gotten back to him because we're going to go ahead and resolve some effects here on Joseph's side.
All right, opting to use the Yama now to summon back that Rage it could potentially be detrimental here because it does play into Dark Ruler. But at least if Dark Ruler is used, you are able to easily just go Sharvara again on the Rage and then summon it back with Chamber, so you have some more flexibility there.
Taking a moment to think about which monsters we want to summon next, or if we want to use the Dark Ruler. Obviously, the Dark Ruler no more would be good, but just like we talked about early, every time you use a card, you have one less card to discard for those memories.
Yeah, Chris definitely sees that line. He knows all cards available right now. Pearly Street will be able to prevent the Rage from getting maximum value if he's able to put monsters on the field, but I saw his hand. He only has two, and one of them is Dark Ruler, and I don't think the other one, or one of them is a spell, but you have to make a choice here.
Definitely do. The road not taken may lead to victory.
I mean, realistically, you're not going to just activate Dark Ruler and do nothing, right? So you
Probably
have to activate that Pretty Memory. Summon another monster here. It won't be able to be targeted, so that's pretty good. But you will potentially lose out to an Abominable.
Taking a second. There's only two moves to make here. Heads or tails.
Okay, Chamber is going to be used immediately here to summon out that Rakea. Just having some even more flexibility in case he doesn't want to have to use the Sharvara immediately. Rakea can go after the Sarama. He'd be able to actually, oh, I see what he's doing here. He's actually going to use Abominable right now to go after the Pearly Street just to make sure Rage can get maximum value.
Absolutely. If the straight Pearly Street's no longer on the field, you can target those monsters the turn that they're summoned, and that would be a way to link those off before any Pearly shenanigans happened at all.
Especially since you know Chris only has two cards in hand. Yep. You know that you're going to be able to get the value here. I think this is an interesting position. He could have chained the Pearly spell in his hand to be able to summon Pearly from the deck. And then the Abominable would be chaining in response to the effect of the Pearly, which means Rage still can't target it. But not that it really matters. I think you're not actually going to care too much because nothing's going to interact with the actual search. And then Rage could have still used the Pearly after the fact as soon as Street is destroyed.
Absolutely. Well, Chris has to make this play now. So Pearly Pretty Memory activated.
Yep, it's going to give up that Dark Ruler no more.
Gorgeous copy of it for sure. Let's see what we're summoning is going to be Pearly.
Yep. My Friend Pearly was already used, so not really useful to go after that. So this is going to be really just forcibly trying to go after the one in the graveyard. I think you're able to add, you're able to add Pearly so you can get an additional normal summon for value here. It doesn't have to use the Rage until the Pearly is activated at this point. But also, you might just do it anyway, simply because you want to have Little Knight for the Pearly, the regular Pearly. So, because there's nothing you can get off of singular Pearly that can do anything at this point.
Not yet, but at the same time, it's one of those things where we've seen some conservative play from Joseph's side. Chris has just have to play the cards he has, so we're going to take a look at the top three from using that Pearly effect, and a total whiff, and that's going to be the concession of game one.
Joseph able to take it with the Unchained strategy here, going for very important, able to play through those interruptions very efficiently. Even with a poor hand, I mean, Tour Guide is obviously a great start, and you did have Sharvara as well as multiple trap cards. So I can't actually call it a poor hand. It was a very strong hand, but opening Shyama is not ideal, but it managed to play without it.
It's one of those things where you just try to bury it in the deck, right? You're only running one copy of those cards because you don't want to draw them, but at the same time, it's going to happen sometimes. Obviously, he knew what he was doing. If you get this far in the tournament, you're used to the deck being kind of drawn out of the order that you would prefer it to be, and he showed some great just pressure to make sure that those cats never got well into the house that they wanted to be.
So now Chris does have the option to go first here.
So we're taking a look at the side deck here. What do you think you pull in to kind of keep that momentum going? Even as the Unchained player, you want to make sure that, you know, Pearly doesn't get a chance to do what it wants to do.
I mean, realistically, if you're able to put Herald the Abyss in your deck, that is going to be your main form of interaction. Like, you just want to be able to deal with the Noir, or have an out to Noir naturally in your main deck. If you don't like naturally have something along the lines of Underworld Goddess in your extra deck.
Would be difficult. Obviously, Underworld Goddess is great because you can keep it in the extra deck and go ahead and link off all of those cards, including that unaffected X-Pearl Noir. But at the same time, if you don't have access to it, you got to work with what you got. On the same side, thinking about, you know, from Christopher's perspective, certainly we've seen Pearlies kind of switch into a control strategy where they use various trap cards to kind of keep up the pressure and protect their own monsters. But we've also seen situations where they can't put a Pearly on the board, so it doesn't really help them to go ahead and just flip up the trap cards and do nothing else.
Absolutely. So I think as far as Chris goes, he's less concerned about playing any of those more powerful trap cards. I think he just wants to get going with the Pearly engine. He just wants to be able to set up a Noir. Like, usually if you can get Noir on the field between the first 2 turns, that's enough, right? You get a lot of value out of that, potentially some draws as well. I think he's just going to focus down on getting that. If he manages to draw some additional trap cards to protect the field, that's great. But if he doesn't manage to set up any Pearlies actually on the field, then you're not really getting anywhere.
Exactly. It's one of those things where Pearly has been featured multiple times through the tournament, but we haven't really seen those big, beefy extra deck monsters like X-Pearl Noir. But it looks like the players are just about ready to go here, so we might be going into Game 3 shortly. Or Game 2, excuse me.
I mean, maybe shortly if Chris gets exactly what he wants, but we'll have to see here in game number 2. I do see at least one Pearly and Solemn Judgment.
So he did switch possibly into those trap cards in a more defensive version of the Pearly deck.
Stand by me. Yeah.
I mean, this seems like a strong hand. He has access to My Friend. He has a couple of options with a Pearly as well. I mean, if Pearly hits, we haven't seen Pearly hit very often lately today.
We haven't. Poor little cat cannot find what it's looking for.
In fact, we're leading with My Friend, which takes away from the odds of going with Pearly, but I mean, Chris knows his odds pretty well. I think he has a more strict plan as to what he wants with the My Friend Pearly.
Definitely needs to get his game plan going. Just hasn't been able to do it yet so far, but at the beginning of this game 2, getting that My Friend Pearly, allowing him to reveal 3, usually of the same card. Yep, Sleepy Memory, and hey, Sleepy Memory.
I mean, there was an option there for going for Delicious, you know, try and make a Noir turn 1. But if you don't have the spells and traps for it, then you don't really necessarily want to do that.
No, it looks like he wants to go for the extra resources that we see whenever we get Pearl Leap and Sleepy Memory in the standby phase.
He does have access to Solemn Judgment to protect it from something along the lines of Book of Moon or Spellbound. Oh, it hit. We got a Happy Memory here, which is actually incredibly strong against Unchained. Well, I mean, it has a lot of uses against most decks, but against Unchained specifically, it's better to just keep it set because you can protect any card from being destroyed because you can use it as an interruption to protect those additional trap cards or whatever, so they won't get destroyed from Aruha or they just won't trigger.
It's always great when you have those unique matchups where a card you have that's just supposed to help your strategy is actually the counter to the deck you're playing, especially when you're this late in the tournament.
I've heard a lot of players say if you have access to 2 Happy Memory, it's better to just set them both, and the Unchained deck just can't play.
That's true. If they can't destroy, they can't do what they plan to do. Not going to escape anywhere.
Looks like we're just going to rank up immediately with Pearly here. Going to use that Sleepy Memory.
Let's get that Noir on the field there. Not the big Noir, the little Noir.
Is he going to just have to activate that happiness? Like, it looks like he's considering it here.
Decided not to at the last second. No, we are going in.
Yeah, now it's going to be a question of whether he wants to summon or not. He's going to chain. He's going to be able to set that per leap.
So now it's 3 materials, counting up to 5.
Always right there on top.
Certainly easy to find.
I think he's considering he's going to discard the Pearly here to special summon.
This is what's going to be protected.
Yeah, the Happy targeted the My Friend Pearly, just confirming as well.
It's just remembered.
So My Friend Pearly cannot be destroyed this turn as well as the next turn. And there is Pearly going to be able to use its effect, add another card here. It's going to add Stray Pearly Street.
And knowing that we already have Pearl Leap, that Stray Pearly Street is really going to help because next turn, no targeting on that monster.
Yeah, this is a very strong opening here. Near ideal, I'd say.
Well, Pearly fans, pray for your powered up deck because this is actually how the deck is supposed to resolve. Pearly after Pearly, and here's another Sleepy Memory during the end phase.
You have a protection built in from the Solemn Judgment here. And then you also have the small protection of just having Pearly on the field means Herald of the Abyss makes you choose that monster with that type and attribute. You can just send the Pearly instead.
Yeah. No, absolutely a heads-up play there because Herald of the Abyss, it's really designed to make your opponent go ahead and send the card to the graveyard. So, you know, Pearly Noir, it might be unaffected by activated effects, but it's not unaffected by your opponent being made to send it to the graveyard. But since, again, just like you said, you've got that Pearly Noir, you can go ahead and protect it. Speaking of Pearly cards, looks like we are going to go ahead and use the Pearl Leap. We drew 2, and now we're about to draw 2 again.
Yep, every single copy of Sleepy is once per
Activate the
turn.
effective
And now, since you summoned a new monster on top of it, you can use them again. So that is 4 activations of Sleepy Memory for 4 cards drawn. And then there was at least one Nibiru drawn. So Nibiru and Ash Blossom sitting in Christopher's hand.
How many cards are there? 5.
It's a very strong position, having put 5 very powerful cards on the field. Good situational awareness and still having 5 cards in the hand.
All right, we're going to start off with Dark Contract from the gates here. Not necessarily anything that Christopher has to actually be worried about.
So we're adding to our hand our Vice King Requiem, the DDD strategy.
Remind me again, how much defense does Noir naturally have?
Ooh. It has so much defense when I see Happy Memory. I don't think I remember that off the top of my head. But luckily, we've got the Yu-Gi-Oh! Neuron app to be able to check that at our leisure.
I want to say it's 2,800 so, without Delicious Memory anywhere near it, so it doesn't gain any stats. So
You would be correct. 2,800 it is.
Yeah, 1128. Okay. So I believe it's only 2 copies of Sleepy as well as a Happy under it. So not going to be massive here. You could just attempt to attack over it with the Deus Ex, the Machina X.
It's this effect that gives it the pop, right?
Yeah, that's that effect. Yep.
But that'll just force the Noir to just go ahead and send it back to the bottom of the deck.
For the cards or just the monsters?
Certainly can't wait around to get destroyed by battle.
I'm thinking here.
Have to get its material sometime later.
I feel like I know what you have after that.
Chris may be using the powers of the Millennium Eye that he has tattooed onto him, thinking that he might know what is going to happen next.
Yep, so he's going to have to be really mindful about what he detaches here. Detaches the
Detach,
Happy as well as the Noir, which puts him
yeah,
at
the Noir
under
and
5 materials, but it looks like there is not a copy of Enemy Controller to try and take the Noir. But it wouldn't work anyway because there is a straight Pearly Street and it was special summoned this turn, so it can't be targeted actually, so it's pretty safe here.
Definitely get to actually use those Xyz materials and not worry too hard because your card is safe.
So even though it can now be affected by card effects, it is still going to be protected from targeting by the straight Pearly Street. A copy of Forbidden Droplet would have gone a long way. But now we can normal summon Tour Guide.
Yeah, 4, right?
Yeah, 4 and
Considering what we're going to do, Joseph's got 4 cards in hand. Obviously, we did see the Ash Blossom and Nibiru earlier. He may want to hold out and just let the Nibiru happen. But he also could Ash Blossom right here. It'd be very strong to stop Tour Guide in its tracks.
At this point, you probably just want to be aggressive with the...
Solemn
Oh,
Judgment.
well, you know, never mind. That's aggressive for sure, using the Solemn Judgment on the Tour Guide.
So you got 40.
Wasting that normal summon and preventing anything from being on the field. That's a little bit better than negating the effect because, again, now there's not a monster on the field to destroy.
At this point, I believe what Chris's game plan is he's going to use every interaction he can with Noir to go after whatever he tries to destroy, via, whether it be Aruha, Rakea, or whatever. He's just going to use a prison on the Ash on the prison here.
And that is all she wrote. Looks like Pearly is pushing towards that amazing Defender's trifecta.
Yeah, but very quick game 3, just like you wanted. Oh, sorry, quick going into game 3.
Turns out I didn't misspeak after all. Duelists are going to have to think pensively because, again, this is it. This is your last chance to activate, or excuse me, access your side deck. Decide what it is that you want to do. Don't want to overcompensate too hard. You need your in-engine cards so that you can get your game plan going.
Yeah, we were talking about powerful cards here coming out of the side just to protect your turn 1 plays. That could be somewhat detrimental if you draw them without being able to play on your own. But it's not like Joseph doesn't have any of those himself here. He has actually access to Mistaken Arrest, which is not as good as Spellbound, but still pretty strong in this matchup.
Absolutely. Now, Chris is definitely accessing his side deck, so he might be switching away from the defensive strategy back into a more offensive one if he ends up going second here. Joseph seems to be setting some cards aside too, so yes, both duelists are taking this opportunity to side deck very seriously so they can get set up for their possibly final game in the semifinals here. 2 duelists go in. 1 duelist, unfortunately, is only going to be 4th place, or actually the 3rd, 4th place playoff. But both just decorated duelists in their own right, and what an amazing adventure that they've had to get this far.
Absolutely. I wonder how much Joseph's going to keep in his deck, even though he knows he can go first now. Whether it be the Droll and Lockbirds, just to hold. If they functionally are similar to Mistaken Arrest is obviously better because it cuts off that first interaction. But Droll and Lockbird keeps him away as well. And maybe you just want to maximize that ability to just make sure Chris can't put any cards on the field or can't generate any value, and then he has to still play into the Unchained field. But I don't know if there's anything worth giving up for that exchange. Maybe something along the lines of Nibiru. Like Nibiru has been shown to be not as strong. I mean, I think it's very similar to Droll and Lockbird, where you can't really play into the field as well as a copy of Nibiru in hand because you have to play into it, but Droll and Lockbird is a little bit more severe.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where, you know, Nibiru hasn't come up too much in this match. It hasn't really had a turn where we've had so many summons where it would be relevant. But this could be the duel where it is important. So that's always the decision you have to make with your side deck. Is it going to happen or is it not? And you might guess right, you might guess wrong, but that could cost you your tournament survival.
So the players are getting fully shuffled up here. They've finished siding. They're about to present and get started. One more power shuffle from Chris here.
It's your last chance to do it. You want to take every chance you can as long as you're still operating within the side deck time limits. And our judges are there making sure the players keep the pace of play. But again, this is it. This is that moment where every single decision is so important. Every decision is writing the history of YCS Richmond.
You know, some people can be a little bit superstitious. Like, you try to give it that extra shuffle so you can have just that much better of a hand, right?
Magic Sauce. Great sportsmanship as the players shake each other's hands and get ready to draw their opening hands themselves.
The 5 cards are placed on the table there. Looks like we're going to be ready to go.
Both players seem to let out a sigh. Obviously really interested in Game 3 here, the semifinals of YCS Richmond.
Yeah, not a whole lot of excitement because there's just so much pressure. They can feel it. This is their one shot to move on into the finals. They have to take this game.
Looks like Joseph's going to go first, crossing into the main phase.
Really considering his options here, not going straight away, so maybe not the easiest decision. Okay, so it's going to be Abomination's Prison. That usually means you have a lot of safety going through your plays, likely going to be something along the lines of Aruha or maybe one of the trap cards to get started.
Haven't gotten a chance to see Christopher's hand yet, so we don't know if he's sitting on an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring.
There is the Aruha. Do we see a Drone Lockbird for some reason from Christopher? I imagine not so, but you know, you never know.
Certainly would be interesting. But it looks like we're going right into setting a card face down.
Yeah, the very standard opening here. Aruha tribute hit the set. It's going to be Escape, so we have access to Escape at least. Escape is likely going to... I suppose you can summon Shyama here. Yep, there's Shyama. Shyama going to be able to destroy the Aruha, going to be able to summon Sharvara from the deck.
All of a sudden, we have very quickly gotten to 2 level 6 monsters.
This at least, this line of play plays very, or tries to keep you as much advantage as soon as you can. You're putting the Shyama in the graveyard to fulfill more special summon ability, while also putting Sharvara in the graveyard so you can immediately set another of those Unchained spell traps. So now you'll have access to Chamber as well. And of course, Yama is going to be able to get you anything else you want.
Now, this could be a turn where Nibiru might be really important.
Yeah, but this is the line that allows you to protect yourself from Nibiru the most. So likely the Yama is going to add Sarama to hand so you can normal summon it, because you did start without having to do any of those normal summons. Okay, you're adding Sharvara, which means you probably already have Sarama in hand.
Makes sense if you're not going for that one of in the deck. Gonna go and present. Let's go ahead and get a little cut here. Find out what's going on next. Very deliberate, intentional play from Joseph here, just making sure that he's making every correct decision he can.
Okay, no, he's going for Shyama here. Just immediately trying to special summon himself, going to be able to summon another monster from the deck with the effect of Chamber. There's going to be another Sharvara.
This feels like the point where we might intersect into our High Wave King Caesar. And there we go, we're opening up the overlay network.
Yeah, Chris didn't seem to have any kind of response here, so there is a Caesar in defense. Trying to play around maybe a Lightning Storm or so.
Possibly. Just don't want to take that chance again. Every moment's important here.
I see. He wanted to conserve the normal summon for Tour Guide. This is really interesting. Does he play Sangan?
Taking a roundup route look here. I don't see a Sangan.
Interesting. So not going to be doing any of those fancy plays right now. I wonder what he's trying to go for. He's going to try to summon... Yeah, so he's going to summon a Rakea. He can use Sharvara in his hand to destroy the Rakea and try to end on a much stronger field. Is he going for double Caesar? He might be going for double Caesar.
It would be very powerful. Obviously, you can use that effect multiple times per turn. Having 2 sets of them, that might be an incredible way to keep those Pearlies from ever doing what they're supposed to. Just taking a little look at the graveyard here.
Yep, there it is. He's going to be able to finally summon that Sarama. Sarama can likely go after the Rage and reset Chamber. Does he target the chamber here?
Would imagine so. Certainly a masterclass of Unchained play. Everything getting to resolve, everything getting to go off. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Christopher has anything in his hand that would stop this prematurely.
No, he's going after escape here.
Yep.
You're going to add back another Sharvara. Okay. Interesting. Just going to naturally make this field. It seems like a roundabout way of going through this, but now we finally have a Pot of Prosperity once you're going through so many cards in your deck.
Looks like we're about to see 6 more.
Now you're looking for that non-engine at this point, right? Or you probably would take another copy of Chamber. Chris looks, I'm not really sure what that means.
Well, it looks like we got Infinite Impermanence, another Infinite Impermanence, 2 copies of Dark Contract with the Gate, a Droll and Lockbird.
Oh, you're taking the Mistaken Arrest. You're taking the Mistaken Arrest.
The Mistaken Arrest is huge here. Nice to be able to play Tour Guide and Mistaken Arrest in the same deck.
They're on the bus.
Taking a second here to think about it. The Mistaken Arrest is what he's going to take. We've talked about it throughout the tournament, but...
Every time I add, you draw.
No, it's neither player can add cards until the end of the next turn.
It's similar to a Droll and Lockbird, but you can draw. And it works for 2 turns. So it will be stopping Joseph's turn on the following turn as well.
Hey, but if you're already set up, that may not be the drawback you think it is.
The biggest concern here is that you don't get the value from Caesar if you activate this.
Thing, right?
Ah, because it's just a monster on the board hanging out with no summons to negate.
Well, no. More so not being able to add the Dark Contract because it blocks you as well.
Turn?
But I mean, that was going to happen with Droll anyway.
Anything?
Nothing in the draw phase.
No.
Yeah, Mistaken Arrest is not a card you typically use immediately. You want to wait until it trades up.
Christopher, I think, mistaking it for Shared Ride earlier, but no, it's Mistaken Arrest. Sengen is in trouble this time. Considering carefully his options, this is Pearly's last hope in the tournament, and also Christopher's.
I mean, still also Joseph's. No guarantee that he gets to steal this victory here.
But it is a strong and impressive board here, so Christopher's going to have to make some careful plays to get through it.
He does have that Harpy's Feather Duster. Yeah, he has a lot of powerful spells in his hand, the Enemy Controller as well as the Dark Duster. Did I see a Dark Lord more? I don't think I did. Oh, yes, it is there in the corner.
So he's got everything he needs to turn this board basically just off.
But he has a Sharvara in hand. He unfortunately doesn't have Yama.
Well, Christopher will have to commit something to the board soon. We've certainly checked the graveyard. It's time to make a decision here, but it is a difficult one. Certainly can sympathize.
Okay, we're starting with the Duster. It's going to force out the Mistaken Arrest at the very least right now. The Escape is going to be able to summon a monster from the deck.
And Nathan Caldwell, and finally Alexander Papalopoulos. You have 2 minutes to come to the left side.
Joseph, think about if he's going to activate any of those cards in response.
He might not want to use the Mistaken Arrest if he doesn't have to, just so he can keep the follow-up available to him. But I think that's a little risky.
It's an important decision, but he is going to activate Mistaken Arrest.
Yep, has to be wary now that he's going to be under that restriction as well going into his next turn. Escape will be able to special summon another monster here. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry, he didn't end up using that Yama, so perfectly fine way to play through the Dark Ruler as well.
Well, from now on, neither player is going to be able to add cards from the deck to their hand because of that Mistaken Arrest, so...
It doesn't stop him from adding from the graveyard, right, just to make sure?
Taking a look at the text here, only the deck is restricted.
Cool. So really, only thing we're losing out on is going to be that Caesar for this moment.
2
2 cards, yeah.
I wonder what you even want to summon with this right now. Maybe just an Aruha? Yeah, just an Aruha, just so you have access to Abominable from the Sharvara in your hand. So now you're likely going to force out the Dark Ruler as well.
You kind of have to do it. I mean, there's no other options here because all of those monsters are a threat to those precious Pearlies.
Yeah, and you do have Straight Pearly Street as well as Enemy Controller to push through that. The Enemy Controller is going to be pivotal at dealing with the Rage here. But after that, it's just about having enough to actually do anything because you're still under that effect of Mistaken Arrest. You have the means to deal with the board, but you have the means to get started.
Well, we're going to have to start somewhere. Obviously, I feel like the Dark Ruler no more is no. Okay, we're not going to, but it does feel like what you have to start this turn off with if you're going to get anything done.
Well, now that I see the hand, it's my friend Pearly and Perlily, both really strong if they are able to resolve, but under Mistaken Arrest, they can't do anything, so Christopher Hands actually does nothing.
Might be trying to figure that out now, how he can possibly proceed. Doesn't normal summon the Perlili.
At this point, he knows that he doesn't have any way to progress his own game state. He just needs to force out all of Joseph's response in some way that benefits him, try to get him to use his cards in the least efficient way possible. And currently, he doesn't even have a way to actually deal with the Caesar. He's going to have to take the Caesar, which is going to force out the Shavara.
No, I said normal.
So again, not even attempting to activate the effect. Christopher very aware of what Mistaken Arrest does. Taking a look again to confirm, but again, just not adding cards from the deck to the hand, which is one of Perley's favorite things to do.
Looks like he's going to be activating that Dark Ruler finally here. That's going to be fine.
Definitely have to. No monster effects can be activated in response to this card, so there's probably not a lot we can do here.
Dosh's just going to say, okay. And now Christopher has to find a way to force out any of Joseph's cards.
How many cards is that? How many cards? 3.
Certainly a heads up from Joseph playing all of his monsters in defense mode. I think he was trying to avoid any Lightning Storm blowups. Only got half the Lightning Storm, though. We got the Feather Duster, not the Raigeki.
Yeah.
Chris knows he's in a rough situation here. He's trying to find some line, looks into the graveyard. Don't think it's there.
Taking another look at that graveyard. There's not really a lot of options here.
He's going to have to try to enemy controller take one of the opponent's monsters here, likely the Rage, so he can use the Rage, but that's going to be a trigger. That's going to trigger the Rage. Oh no, he's actually managed to force out a play from Joseph here because Joseph doesn't know that Chris doesn't have anything.
Trying to get the most mileage out of your Unchained monsters, but it is true that Christopher hasn't really started his turn yet effectively. Really only turning effects off, getting that monster on the board, but if you can't add those cards to your hand, you can't continue this duel, so see what he does next. Go ahead and sending out Aruha, destroying it, and bringing out Shavara.
So, Rakea already in the graveyard. I'm not sure what you want to summon here. Are you trying to summon Abominable? Seems very expensive at this point.
I would do Chain Link 1.
Oh, because he already has another copy of Rage in the grave, maybe, so that he's just going to summon it back now.
Certainly could be a way to do it. To a degree, Joseph's position is from the advantage, so he's just giving himself even more insurance that he gets to survive this turn and come back next turn.
And then Chain Link 2. Are we going to special Chain Link 1? Sorry. Chain Link 2 Yama targeting my Shavara.
All right, he's just going to summon another Shavara here. Very interesting. Not even wanting to actually keep a Rage live at this point. Going to summon out the Abominable. Going to summon out another Shavara. I wonder if Joseph's just being a little nervous here. Sees the mistake because like maybe he was trying to get the Rakea from, but he realized it's in the graveyard. Yep, going to give up an Ash. Yeah, I'm sure this was not what he intended.
I see.
So make sure you resolve that Yama here. You will need to summon that a second Shavara at this point. But yeah, this even if you chain enemy controller here, Unchained Abominable Soar does not target the card it destroys. So whatever you take will simply be destroyed instead.
It's a difficult decision for Chris. He's taking a look at that graveyard again, and yes, in Unchained, there certainly are a lot of options. But at this point, we've got to push the duel forward.
There should be the Yama should be summoning that Shavara from the graveyard as well. The Shavara currently on the field was from the hand. So for what it's worth, while Shavara is on the field, he is locked into Fiends. So being able to summon Little Knight will not have been an option this turn anyway. Only while it's on the field anyway, but I don't think it's leaving out in his own control.
Certainly minimizes the importance of Unchained Soul of Rage, but also with the Dark Ruler no more, not a lot's happening on that end. Looks like we're going to activate enemy controller, enter the code left, right, AB to steal a monster.
Yeah, you're probably going to take the Caesar just to try to minimize value. Oh, no, you're going to take the soul here. It's just going to destroy itself at that point. Which, I don't know where you go from there with two cards that you can't do anything with.
Interesting, too, because Joseph's hand went right to the Caesar, almost like he was about to pass it over to Christopher, but Christopher did go for the alternative choice.
Whatever you want.
So make sure to resolve a soul here.
Down to just the last few cards for Christopher here. Definitely having an hour turn kind of moment, considering how many Unchained effects have resolved this turn, which is Christopher's turn.
I'm confused why. Yeah, Soul's destroying Soul. Yeah, and that's enough. Joseph takes it. No, Chris knows he has no actual playable cards. You just wanted to play it out. And Joseph is going to the finals.
Well, the Pearly players did amazing this tournament, but unfortunately we will not have that amazing Defenders trifecta. But the handshake coming down a second time. Both players certainly understanding. They've been up at the tables before. They understand what it takes to be here. And the other guy across from you has put in just as much work, so sometimes it's just not in the cards for you. But hey, this was quite the achievement to get this far again.
Yeah, honestly, it takes Pearly Fanatics to get this far, because I really don't think the deck was well positioned into this format. I think it had a lot of bad matchups, especially with Rescue Ace being so popular. We see multiple times in the feature match how Rescue Ace just has so many effects that really shut Pearly down. So it was not my choice for this event if I would have played. But I mean, we see players that truly love the strategy like Chris going as so far to make top 4 here. But we see the Unchained deck showing why its conversion rate was so strong. It's going into the finals now. We don't know what it's up against at the moment. It could be Pack with Infernoble. It could be another strategy that would be very interesting. I believe it was Horse Tier.
Yes, I believe it is the Horse Tier Lament strategy, which is really interesting. Think about what we just said. There's no more Rescue Ace Sinful Spoils left in this tournament.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I assumed it was going to be the best strategy for this event. I thought it was the safest way to get into that top 32, but at this point, every deck was probably designed to beat it, right? You were trying to beat that deck. You were trying to also take account for Mikanko, because those are the last 2 decks to have won major tournaments so far. And these are the decks you respected a little less.
Absolutely, but that means we're going to move on to our finals with 2 decks that are not Rescue Ace Sinful Spoils, so it'll be exciting for those fans who have certainly seen the Fire Department. But we're going to go to a quick break so we can interview our winner, or then go to the finals.